Britain's cars were once world famous. Sleek Jaguars, iconic Minis, and Triumphs that defined style and engineering. In the 1950s, Britain was the world's second-largest car producer, a symbol of national pride. But glory didn't last. Rivalries, mismanagement, and industrial chaos slowly destroyed an industry that had captured the world's admiration. Factories closed, brands were sold, and communities suffered. This is the story of Britain's car industry, a tale of brilliance, failure, and lessons that still echo today. Britain's car industry was once the crown jewel of the nation's manufacturing sector, a symbol of ingenuity, craftsmanship, and global prestige. It was an industry that defined the country's identity, shaped its culture, and drove economic growth. The world admired British cars, from the sleek Jaguar E-Type, which earned accolades even from Enzo Ferrari, to the revolutionary Mini, which redefined urban mobility. Britain's automotive creations were icons of style, innovation, and engineering excellence. In the 1950s, Britain was the world's second-largest car producer, exporting millions of vehicles across Europe, Asia, Africa, and Australia. British factories hummed with activity, creating cars that became status symbols, cultural touchstones, and practical companions. The industry was not merely a collection of factories, it was an engine of national pride. Streets, showrooms, and workplaces were alive with the brilliance of British engineering, and each new model carried the promise of innovation and quality. Yet, within a single generation, this global powerhouse became a cautionary tale. Factories closed, iconic brands were sold to foreign owners, and skilled workforces scattered. The story of Britain's car industry collapse is one of brilliance undone by mismanagement, political interference, and industrial conflict, a story where triumph and failure intertwined. The seeds of decline were sown in the chaotic post-war structure of the British automotive industry. Unlike countries such as Germany, Italy, or the United States, Britain had no single dominant car manufacturer. Instead, the industry was a patchwork of dozens of independent companies, each proud of its heritage and fiercely competitive with its domestic rivals. Names like Austin, Morris, Rover, Standard Triumph, and Jaguar carried prestige and loyal followings. This diversity produced remarkable innovation. Each manufacturer developed unique designs, production methods, and engineering approaches. Cars like the Austin Mini and Morris Minor reflected ingenuity and responded to specific consumer needs. Jaguar created vehicles that combined performance with elegance, but this fragmented landscape came at a cost. Competition among domestic firms often led to inefficiencies and duplication. Companies duplicated production lines, reinvented components unnecessarily, and failed to coordinate strategies for the international market. Instead of collaborating to compete against global giants, they fought each other. This internal rivalry created vulnerabilities that would later make the industry particularly susceptible to external pressures. By the late 1960s, the government became increasingly concerned that Britain's automotive industry was losing its competitive edge. Global competitors were growing stronger. German and Japanese automakers were investing in efficiency, quality control, and innovative designs. Britain risked falling behind. Rather than encouraging collaboration or strategic modernization, the state engineered a forced consolidation. In 1968, the British Leyland Motor Corporation, BL, was formed, merging over 100 brands under one corporate umbrella. This so-called corporate shotgun marriage brought together firms with deeply entrenched cultures and rivalries. The intention was to create a national champion capable of competing internationally. The reality, however, was chaos. Engineers from Jaguar and Triumph, known for their design excellence, were forced to share components with Austin and Morris, whose models were far more pedestrian. This compromise stifled innovation and damaged pride. On factory floors, historic rivalries intensified. Management struggled to maintain control, while unions exercised extraordinary power. Derek Red Robinson became a notorious figure, orchestrating strikes that, sometimes over minor grievances, frequently halted production. In just 3 years, British Leyland experienced over 500 strikes, a staggering demonstration of systemic industrial unrest. Meanwhile, cars that did make it off the production line developed reputations for unreliability. Doors fell off, electrical systems failed, bodywork corroded in just a few years. consumers began to mock British cars as rust buckets, and the nation's pride in its automotive heritage began to erode. The 1973 oil crisis exposed the industry's weaknesses more starkly than any strike or labor dispute could. The sudden surge in fuel prices created unprecedented consumer demand for small, efficient, and reliable cars, vehicles that Britain had pioneered decades earlier. The Mini and Morris Minor had already demonstrated that the UK could excel in the compact car market. Yet British Leyland was unprepared. Its lineup was outdated, and production inefficiencies made it slow to respond to changing consumer needs. Japanese automakers, including Toyota, Datsun, and Honda, seized the opportunity. They offered cars that were reliable, fuel-efficient, and backed by warranties. British models could not compete. Even well-designed vehicles like the Rover SD1 or Austin Metro failed to overcome the public perception of poor quality and unreliability. Facing a rapidly deteriorating market position, British Leyland once again turned to the government for help. In 1975, the company was nationalized, with a massive taxpayer bailout aimed at saving jobs and stabilizing production. However, political priorities, protecting employment and appeasing unions, overrode the need for efficiency and competitiveness. Management lost authority. Closing inefficient factories or implementing productivity measures risked sparking industrial unrest. Unions leveraged this weakness to demand inflationary wage increases while productivity stagnated or even declined. British Leyland became trapped in a vicious cycle. Cars built at a loss required government subsidies, while labor disputes and industrial chaos persisted. Even amid decline, British engineers continued to produce brilliant designs. The Rover SD1, introduced in 1976, was hailed as a design masterpiece and earned European Car of the Year honors. The Austin Metro, launched in 1980, was designed to revive the company's fortunes. Models like the Maestro and Montego offered modern features and competitive performance. Yet these achievements were undermined by systemic production failures. Factory floors could not deliver the reliability or build quality needed to restore public confidence. A well-designed car meant little if it could not withstand everyday use. This contradiction, engineering excellence paired with abysmal production standards, embodies the very essence of the triumph of failure. The 1980s marked a turning point. Margaret Thatcher's privatization agenda transformed the landscape. State ownership, once intended as a safety net, became a liability. British Leyland was dismantled and sold off in parts. Jaguar was sold to Ford in 1989, and Rover Group changed hands from British Aerospace to BMW in 1994. The MG Rover scandal illustrated the depth of mismanagement. Four executives, acquiring the company for just $10, siphoned $42 million while lobbying the government to maintain employment. In 2005, MG Rover collapsed, with debts totaling $1.4 billion, destroying thousands of jobs and disrupting an entire supply chain. Even the logistics of production reflected the industry's weaknesses. Components for a single Mini, for example, crossed the English Channel 3 times before final assembly. This inefficiency highlighted outdated planning, poor coordination, and strategic mismanagement. Decades later, similar challenges plagued new projects. The British Volt Gigafactory, intended as a $3.8 billion lithium-ion battery plant, collapsed due to poor planning, insufficient funding, and unrealistic government expectations. Britain's reliance on foreign-owned EV production demonstrates the ongoing consequences of mismanagement and short-term thinking. Brexit further accelerated the decline. Automotive supply chains, highly integrated across Europe, faced disruption from tariffs, regulatory divergence, and trade uncertainty. Companies such as Honda, Ford, and Nissan scaled back or abandoned UK operations. Investment in new projects declined sharply. The result was more than reduced production. It was a massive brain drain. Skilled engineers and technical experts left for other countries or industries, creating a long-term skills gap threatening future competitiveness. The collapse of Britain's car industry had profound social consequences. Industrial towns like Longbridge, Luton, and Coventry suffered devastating unemployment. Local economies collapsed, multi-generational careers vanished, and community identities were fractured. Plant closures created hundreds of millions of pounds in regional regional economic losses. The human cost, from mental health impacts to social instability, underscores the wider consequences of industrial decline. Yet, even in this grim landscape, a paradoxical triumph emerged. Foreign investment revived the industry under modern ownership, bringing efficient production techniques, quality control, and global supply chain integration. Jaguar Land Rover, under Tata Motors, and Mini, under BMW, became symbols of what foreign stewardship could achieve. Once dilapidated factories were modernized, producing vehicles admired worldwide. However, this success came at the cost of British ownership. Today, the only major car company still predominantly British-owned is Morgan Motor Company, a small, enduring reminder of Britain's automotive heritage. Iconic brands such as MG, Lotus, Rolls-Royce, Bentley, and Mini are now foreign-owned, often producing vehicles abroad or under multinational management. The loss of these brands represents both economic displacement and the symbolic erosion of national industrial identity.